Oh, introduction to write a manifesto, even for something whose claim to intemporality is as powerful as philosophy's, is to announce that the moment has come to make a declaration. A manifesto always comprises and it is time to say that blurs any distinction between what it says and when it says it. What authorizes me, then, to judge that a manifesto for philosophy is on the agenda, and a second manifesto at that? What is thinking in our times? That an intense philosophical moment took place in France between the 1960s and 1980s, from the last great works of Sartre to the major texts of Althusser, Deleuze, Derrida, Foucault, Lacan, Lacoue-Labarthe or Lyotard, to mention simply the dead, must be unhesitatingly conceded to my friend Frederick. Worms. One proof of this, by negative example as the Chinese say, is the unremitting effort the coalition of a handful of media stars and thrill-seeking Sorbonne professors put into denying that anything at all occurred all those years ago that was truly great, or even just okay. This coalition has shown that it will stop at nothing when it comes to imposing its sterile condemnation upon public opinion. It does not even balk at sacrificing a whole generation of young people put before the detestable alternative of a savage careerism enhanced with a sprinkling of ethics, democracy and, if necessary, piety, or the no less savage nihilism of short-lived pleasures of the no future to variety. The upshot of this dogged determination is that, between the heroic efforts of present-day youth to rediscover a voice that carries and the thinned-out ranks of survivors and inheritors of the great epic one, there is now in philosophy a gaping hole that disconcerts our foreign friends. As regards France, only the election of Sarkozy manages to surprise them as much as does this decline of our intellectuals these last 20 years. In reality, what our American friends are always too quick to forget is that, while France has been the scene of some grandiose displays of mass hysteria flanked by powerful conceptual inventions, it has also been that of a tenacious, servile and anti-communard reaction to which regiments of intellectuals have never failed to rally in the cause of propaganda. You French philosophers we loved so much, whatever became of you during the bleak period of the 80s, or, even more so, the 90s? Is the question we're insistently asked. Well, we were getting on with what had to be done in various places of shelter we'd put together with our own hands. Nonetheless, there are now more and more signs indicating, despite, or because of, the seemingly disastrous deterioration of France's historical, political and intellectual situation, that we old survivors, devoting our faithful labor to the discontented and informed assault of new generations, are about to rediscover a bit of space and light, and some open air. I published my first manifesto for philosophy in 1989. It wasn't a happy time, believe me. The burial of the post-May 1968 red years by interminable years of Mitterrand, the haughtiness of the new philosophers and their humanitarian paratroopers, human rights combined with the right of intervention as the sole means of assistance, the full-bellied Western fortress giving moral lessons to those starving the world over, the collapse without glory of the USSR and the consequent abeyance of the communist hypothesis, the Chinese reversion to commercial genius, democracy ubiquitously identified with the morose dictatorship of a narrow oligarchy of financiers, professional politicians and TV presenters, the cult of national, racial, sexual, religious, and cultural identities seeking to undo the rights of the universal. Preserving, under these conditions, the optimism of thought, trying out new political formulas in close collaboration with workers from Africa, reinventing the category of truth, embarking on the paths of the absolute by way of a totally revamped dialectic of structures necessity and events contingency, giving way on nothing. What a task! It is to this labor that bore witness my first manifest percent our philosophy, as succinct as it was light-hearted. This small book being as though the memoirs of thought jotted down underground. 20 years on, given the inertia of things, it's even worse of course, but every night ends with the promise of dawn. It would be difficult to stoop lower, on the level of state power than Sarkozy's government. On the level of the global situation than the bestial form taken by American militarism and its lackeys. On the level of the police than the countless controls, villainous laws, systematic brutalities, walls and barbed wire fences uniquely aimed at protecting rich and self-satisfied Westerners from their natural, no less than innumerable, enemies, namely, the billions of destitute the world over, Africa above all. On the level of ideology than the miserable attempt at setting against so-called Islamic barbarians a secularism in rags and a comical democracy capped off, for a tragic touch, by the disgusting exploitation of the Nazi extermination of the European Jews. 5. And, finally, on the level of knowledge than the strange concoction we're supposed to swallow of a technologized scientism, the crowning glory of which is the visualization of stereoscopic brains in color, combined with a bureaucratic legalism whose supreme manifestation is the evaluation of all things by experts hailing from nowhere, who invariably conclude that thinking serves no purpose and even proves harmful. Nevertheless, however low we may have sunk, there are, I would repeat, signs serving to sustain the principal virtue of the moment, courage, in a form that rests largely upon the certainty of the imminent, indeed, already effective, return of the affirmative power of the idea. This return is what the present book is dedicated to. The question around which it is structured is precisely, what is an idea? From the narrow point of view of my own work, I can obviously state that this second Manifesto for Philosophy bears the same relation to the second volume of Being and Event, published in 2006 under the title Logics of Worlds, 6 that my first manifesto bore to. The first volume, published in 1988, it presents a simple and immediately mobilizable version of themes that the great work painstakingly sets out in their full, formalized and exemplified form. From a broader perspective, however, it's just as possible to state that the aim of the short clarified version, in 1988, was to attest to the fact of thought's persevering underground, while, in 2008, it became that of showing there are perhaps the means of its resurfacing. As such, it is probably not a coincidence that the central question of Being and Event in 1988 was that of the heing of truths, thought in the concept of generic multiplicity, whereas in 2006, in Logics of Worlds, the question became that of truths appearing. With this found in the concept of a body of truth or subjectivizable body. Let us simplify, and let us hope. 20 years ago, writing a manifesto amounted to saying, philosophy is something completely different from what you are told it is. Try then to see what you are not seeing. Today, writing a manifesto is rather a matter of saying, yes, philosophy can be what you desire it to be. Try to really see what you are seeing. 1.1 Outline. A manifesto for philosophy philosophically declares, then, the existence of